It started on a Wednesday, gray and damp, when the wind curled through the pine trees like it carried a warning. In the small village of Legatny, just north of Cesis, Eliza sat on the stone steps of her grandmother's cottage. The house, once warm with the smell of juniper and bread, now felt hollow. Her grandmother, Bekmamina, had passed 3 days ago. No one had cried. Not during the quiet visit from the priest. Not when they lowered the plain wooden box into the frost-hardened soil behind the church. Not even Mara, her mother, whose face looked like porcelain left too long in the cold. That morning, Eliza woke to the crackle of the old oven downstairs. The scent was unfamiliar, sharper, darker. When she crept down in her wool socks, she saw Mara in the kitchen. She stood still, staring at the oven. Her hands held a blackened slice of rye bread. She liked it this way, Mara said without turning. Eliza said nothing. The bread was burnt completely, crisp to the edges, the smell bitter, like scorched earth. Mara placed it carefully on Bekmamina's old armchair, the one with the blue crocheted blanket folded on its arm. For the next 3 mornings, Mara did the same. Burnt bread. Same chair. Same silence. The house was no longer just quiet. It was watching. Waiting. On the 4th morning, when Eliza sat at the table, she noticed the blanket on the chair had shifted. Slightly. As though someone had sat down. She didn't speak. She didn't dare. On the 7th morning, the bread did not burn. Mara stared into the oven longer than usual. The slice came out dark, yes, but not blackened. She frowned, scraping it back in with a wooden paddle, muttering something under her breath. Eliza caught only one word: disrespect. That same day, the wind picked up. The chimney moaned. Floorboards shifted. And the old wooden oven began to make a new sound, a low whispering hiss that stopped whenever Eliza got close. That evening, Mara did not speak. Her hands trembled slightly when she set the toast down. The blanket on the chair had moved again, unmistakably. Folded differently. Tighter. That night, Eliza dreamed of bread. It wasn't the smell that woke her, but a voice. Soft. Old. Echoing through the oven vent like it was trying to remember its own words. She crept downstairs barefoot. The kitchen was dark, but warm. The oven door was closed, yet the air around it shimmered faintly. She leaned close, placing her ear against the clay. Nakotny, the voice sighed. Future. Eliza jerked away, heart pounding. Behind her, the chair creaked. The next day, Eliza found an old photograph under the kitchen sink. It showed Bekmamina as a young woman, standing outside the same house, holding a scorched piece of bread in her hand. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes looked directly into Eliza's soul, even from decades ago. She ran upstairs to show Mara, but her mother was in her room, door locked. Through the keyhole, Eliza heard weeping. In the silence that followed, Eliza turned the photo over. On the back was a single phrase written in thin blue ink. Feed what is hungry. That evening, the toast burned black again. But this time, a faint circle had formed on the crust, like an eye. Eliza said nothing, but from then on, she began to watch the bread. Closely. A week later, Eliza accidentally dropped a spoon behind the oven. When she reached to retrieve it, her fingers brushed something cold and metallic. She pulled out a tin box covered in soot. Inside were old letters, all addressed to her grandmother, all unopened. Most were postmarked from Lithuania. She opened one. It was from a man named Romas. The letter spoke of a pact, a return, and the phrase, "As long as the bread burns, so shall she remain." Eliza stared at the words. The smell of burnt toast wafted from the kitchen again, stronger this time. She closed the box and tucked it under her bed. That night, the whispering in the oven became louder, and Mara started to hum a lullaby Eliza had never heard before. Eliza confronted Mara the next morning. "What does the bread do?" she asked. Mara froze. "It keeps her here," she finally answered. "Eliza," she didn't go quietly. Then Mara looked out the window, eyes empty. She refused death. She made me promise. In the silence that followed, Eliza felt the house groan beneath their feet. Later that day, she opened the tin box again and read the rest of the letters. Each one mentioned a deal, a soul tethered to scent and ritual. Burnt bread, a vessel. One letter warned, never let the bread go raw. If you do, she will leave, but not alone. Eliza confronted Mara the next morning. What does the bread do? She asked. Mara froze. It keeps her here, she finally answered. Eliza, she didn't go quietly. Then Mara looked out the window, eyes empty. She refused death. She made me promise. In the silence that followed, Eliza felt the house groan beneath their feet. Later that day, she opened the tin box again and read the rest of the letters. Each one mentioned a deal, a soul tethered to scent and ritual. Burnt bread, a vessel. One letter warned, never let the bread go raw. If you do, she will leave, but not alone. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Raw Crumbs. On the 23rd morning, Mara overslept. Eliza panicked. She raced to the kitchen, grabbed the rye bread, and shoved it into the oven. But she didn't know the right temperature. The slice came out brown, not black. She placed it on the plate, hands trembling. The room was silent. Too silent. When Mara entered minutes later, she dropped the teacup in her hand. You fed her raw? She whispered. The walls of the house creaked. The blanket on the chair slipped to the floor. And the back door unlatched itself with a slow metallic click. From that day on, things began to vanish. First it was small things. Eliza's scarf, the salt jar, her father's old book. Then the smell of juniper. The next night, Eliza heard footsteps upstairs, though no one else was there. When she crept up with a candle, she saw the attic door open. Inside, all her childhood drawings lay scattered on the floor. One drawing showed a black figure at the kitchen table. She didn't remember drawing it. Mara grew ill, her skin pale, lips dry. She's waking up, she told Eliza. And I'm not strong enough to hold her. Eliza begged her to stop. We'll burn the chair. Break the oven. Let her go. Mara shook her head. I made a promise. That night, Eliza entered the kitchen alone. She took the bread, the plate, the chair, and she dragged them out into the snow. But when she struck a match, the wind died. The forest went still. And someone whispered, Don't. Eliza ran. Back into the house. Up the stairs. The oven glowed in the dark. The chair sat by itself, now inside the kitchen again. No one had touched it. Mara stood in the corner, eyes closed, lips moving. I'm sorry, she whispered. The oven door swung open. Inside was not fire. It was a room. Eliza stepped closer. She saw her grandmother, sitting at a long table, eyes bright and endless. And there was a seat beside her. Eliza turned to her mother. You have to choose, she said. Mara nodded. Together, they opened the tin box one last time and placed it in the oven. The letters burned. The chair caught fire. The oven howled. A scream, then silence. When dawn came, the house was quiet. No toast. No smell. No whispers. Just a soft warmth and 2 cups of tea. Eliza sat at the table. Across from her, the chair remained empty. Truly empty.